This is KTN.
Watch the Diaspora Voice every Friday from 7:30 p.m. on www.ktnkenya.tv.
Hello viewers, my name is Chris Omalwa and welcome again to our show Diaspora Voice. In Diaspora Voice, what we do is we collect different diaspora voices, part of the contribution to the ongoing dialogue in Kenya about so many issues, issues around the constitution, development. As we speak right now, the diaspora is expected to play a very key role in the development of the country, especially as provided for in the new constitution. Today, this week, we're going to focus a lot on the Obama re-election. It's not election anymore, it's re-election. And today, what we're going to do in the several interviews that we're going to have is speaking to different people concerning how they see Obama. And today, I'm privileged to host one of our ladies, a Kenyan mother, who's been here for some time and who's going to give us a sense of what it means to have Obama as the president. Then, welcome to our show.
Thank you.
I know you're very busy. You've been involved in the Obama campaign. Give us a sense of how things are and how things look as we speak.
Well, we are hoping that President Obama will have a second term. And this is especially so that some of the programs that he has initiated may be able to progress further on, and we might be able to see full benefits, especially on some of the projects, especially healthcare. If you remember, he increased the number of years we can have our children on our health insurance, and that for me benefited my kids, especially those in college. So there are some very good programs that we would like to see progress and continue during his second term.
Again, one of the reasons we're speaking to you is because you represent Kenyan mothers who came to this country with young kids who have grown up to be Americans. For you, what does it mean to have Obama as somebody who has roots in Kenya as the president?
One of the most positive features generally is not just for Kenyans, but the fact that God can promote any one of us. And the promotion and the election for President Obama is a sign that anybody who puts their mind onto something, works hard in life, in free democracies like the democracy in the US and in other parts of the world, everybody has an opportunity to exercise their full potential in life and become what they so much desired to do. And of course, despite the issues that may happen in any family, even not having actively a father involved in his life, in spite of all that and many other hardships that children may experience, his election actually speaks to the possibility that it doesn't matter your background. You could come from Kenya, you can come from any part of the world, and your God-given potentials can make you what you desire to be. You can be the president of the United States of America, you can be the president of Kenya or any other part of the world for that.
Like I said, I know you've raised kids in this country. As a parent, speak again to the example that Obama has set, what it means to our young children, especially Kenyans living in this country.
It means that you have to put your foot down, you have to put effort in everything you do. If you notice, he has had a lot of opposition here. Whatever has happened, he has stood up. And that speaks to a young man that you can stand up despite opposition around you. If you believe in something, you can pursue it. He has shown that a young man can rise up, can beat all odds and become a head of state, and even become a head of an institution, a head of a country. So for young Kenyans, please, regardless of your background, regardless of your experiences, and sometimes very difficult experiences in the US and in other places, there is opportunity for you to excel.
Privilege to bring to you a very special show on the US presidential elections. We are recording this show in Claymont, Delaware at the Simba Grill, where in the next less than 1 hour the debate is going to start between President Barack Obama and his challenger Mitt Romney. And in this show, we are going to bring you the voices of the diaspora, especially the Kenyans who are very keen on the elections. And it's my pleasure to host Mr. David Amakobe. Mr. Amakobe, originally from Kenya, is very involved in the politics of this country, where he's made his home. David, welcome to our show.
Thank you, Chris.
David, in the next about 25 minutes, we're going to have the debates on those screens. One of the things that we want to do right now is to get a sense of how the mood is. How do you think President Obama is going to do in his first debate during this re-election bid?
Basically, as the incumbent, the president is under pressure to make sure that he maintains his ground. But because he's the incumbent, everybody is expecting that the challenger will put on a very strong challenge. But considering the record that the president has had since he took over the country, we expect that he'll be doing a good job giving his case to the American people.
You're part of the Obama campaign group. I know you go to the office and make calls, reaching out to the Kenyans and Americans to vote for the president. I'm more interested in the Kenyan response. How is the Kenyan response to the Obama campaign?
I have to make a correction there. I'm not part of the Obama campaign, but I am a volunteer with Obama for America. And in the volunteering is getting involved to make sure that I do make phone calls, I organize like an event to the watch party like now to make sure that people come together and watch the debate. That way, if they can be able to come together to watch and talk, they can go to the polls to vote. So the Kenyan Americans here, who basically the ones who are interested in are those ones who have become citizens, are Americans, or those who are green card holders, they are permanent residents. They are reacting very well, but we would rather they get involved a little more, because this is the country they have made a home in. They live here. It's okay to think about their country of origin, but also they must get involved in the politics or in the civic duties in this country, because that is where they are living at, that's where their children are growing, and they can make a difference here and also make a difference in their home countries.
David, I know this is not the first time you're getting involved in this, the Obama campaign. You're involved even in the last elections. Can you give us a sense of, is the level of excitement still the same as it was the last time around, or what is it? How is it right now?
I would say we have matured. Our expectations have been tempered a little bit, because now we are the administration. I mean, President Obama is the president. We know how far he can go with the rules and regulations and the opposition. So originally the expectations that he will deliver a lot of things in a very short time. We have learned that he has to do certain things in certain ways. So I would think that the level of excitement is still there, but it's been tempered a little bit with the expectations. So as an increment, there are those people who expected miracles. I can say, like they say, in the impossible we do now, miracles will take a little longer. So that's the situation that we are in right now. But I have a belief and faith that those who have knocked out, the phone calls were made, and the people who have talked to, that we are going to help the president win this election again.
If you monitor, especially the polls, the president had a very big lift after the convention, but over time, Mitt Romney seems to be gaining on to him. Why do you think that is the case?
I can only say this. The Democratic Party had a very good convention, and President Clinton had made a very good case for the president and the party. So the bound the president got is because the American people understood where he stood, where he's taking the country. As to Mitt Romney, whether he's gaining or closing the gap a little bit, I would think as we move closer to the election and people's positions solidify, the people who are undecided make decisions as to which side they are going to vote. That's why you will see it narrow a little bit. But my feeling is, this is my personal feeling, and looking at the record of the president and looking at the people who are getting involved, that we will be able to get the 51% that need to carry the president over.
We are talking to Kenyans living here in the US who have an interest in the Obama campaign, especially, just to give us a sense of where we stand. And it's my pleasure to host Amos Karanja from Pennsylvania. Amos has followed the Obama campaign very closely. Amos, welcome to our show.
Thank you very much.
Speaking to you earlier on, you gave me an indication that you are still an independent voter. So what's going to emerge out of this today is really going to determine where you're going to cast your votes. Of course, you being Kenyan, definitely your vote is going to go to Obama. But
I mean, there's a few issues that I was talking to one of my friends here at Simbaba, and we were thinking about, can anybody really be conservative or democratic? You know what I mean? There's always that point whereby the line that you draw between both parties is not that clear, especially coming from being a Kenyan.
Yes.
Your mind is very open to different ideas.
Yeah. And
the way we see it is the votes could go anywhere. I mean, seriously, especially with Kenyans, because Obama has kind of really stepped his bound, in terms of being a liberal. He's really stepped his bounds there. But I mean, we love him. We like what he's done. Some of the ideas Romney has come up with, in terms of the economy, immigration, may not favor us specifically, but we're willing to put ourselves out there and see what they have for us. Specifically with Obama, the issue we have basically is, him being open to the gay marriage and all that stuff, but most of us think we could walk through that.
Yeah, that's. I was just about to bring up that because there are two things that I've realized are very consistent with Kenyans, especially when it comes to Obama. Of course, they love him as one of their own. Exactly. Everybody knows that Obama is as Kenyans as you and me, to a great extent. But the position he took on the issue of gay marriages has not really started very well with Kenyans.
Yes.
But do you think really at the end of the day, can that be reason enough for Kenyans not to vote for Obama?
The more I try and think deep about it is, I don't think one issue such as that could be a game changer, especially for Obama. I think, if anything, people may decide not to vote for him as opposed to voting for the challenger. I mean, that's the one issue. If you look at other issues like immigration, if you look at the economy, if you look at education, he's been superb on all those other issues. So looking at one issue that you may not feel comfortable with may not be just the selling point that you're not willing to work with. So to me, I don't think it's going to be much of a game changer. But at the same time, you think of, you sit back and you look and you're like, it's something to think about still.
Amos, again, I know Kenyans are very committed to Obama and the Obama re-election.
Yes.
But do you see Kenyans being involved in the campaign as they did the last time around, or is there any changes that you can sense from this time around?
I think the activism in the Obama campaign has probably, if any change has happened, may have been, if there's any reduction, in my opinion, maybe, I don't think it's that much. I think maybe there's new people that are coming in. There's a new crop of Kenyans that's coming in that's doing all the legwork in the grassroots efforts. So if anything, it's just a new crop and not necessarily a reduction in people that are that are necessarily left the campaign.
You know that many the Kenyans have grumbled that Obama has not sacrificed enough for Kenya in particular and Africa in general.
Yes.
Do you share the same views? I mean, in the sense that he didn't sacrifice enough to go to visit his home the home of his father in his first term. What happens if he doesn't win the re-election? Is he going to go and visit Kenya?
That's a very good question. Actually, if anything, that's a very tricky question because to some extent, Obama has been challenged in his 4 years that he's had. He's not been given a chance to do anything politically. I think the problems that the U.S. and the world at large was facing, he's not able to focus on, on Africa specifically. But given the chance that he gets re-elected, I think he'll be able to do go back to Africa and visit and all that stuff. But if anything, I really do not expect that. I'm not looking at him and saying that he's not done enough. I think he's done enough on the back since, and given a chance to get re-elected, I think he's going to do more.
Welcome back to our special presentation of the presidential campaigns in the U.S. We are talking to Kenyans living here who have a sense of what the campaign is all about. And we have in our studio Walter. Walter, welcome to our show.
Thank you.
Please introduce yourself to our viewers.
Yeah, my name is Walter Ologi. I'm a Kenyan by birth, and I've been living in the U.S. for over 10 years. I've been living in Delaware for now 13 years, and here I am with Chris. We want to talk about the debate.
Walter, very good. We are recording this show in at Simba Grill, one of the few restaurants that we have in Kenya. It's my pleasure to be here to monitor and to watch the debates. How are Kenyans in Delaware following up the Obama campaign?
Kenyans in Delaware are all very happy and energetic, especially the American citizens who will be able to participate in the voting system in the United States. Obama has roots in Kenya, so by that virtue makes more Kenyans more interested in his politics and what is going on in the media. They're following the media all the time. The discussions are coming up all the time, and we are at that point. And at the same time, we are encouraging them to participate in the system, because this is where we are now.
For those Kenyans in the US who have the power of the vote, and even those ones, even if they don't have the power to vote, we've seen from the debates, the race is generally tightening, and Obama will need everybody on board to carry the day come the elections day. What will be your advice to those people who are still sitting on the fence, waiting for something to nudge them over to get involved in the campaign? What will be your message?
My message is that this is our time. The same message we passed on the last election, that this is the time that we need to come up and support the president because of what it stands for. I would urge Kenyans who can participate to get up and participate. We'll be walking door to door. We'll do it the American way, because here we are American citizens too. So we can have our own to work together with the Americans and knock doors so that we get out and vote for President Obama.
This has been a very special presentation of the campaigns 2012, the US campaigns, and I'll see you again in a new episode. Thank you.
Every Sunday from 9 a.m. Radio meets TV. The DJ plays you the best of gospel music. Inspirational and life-changing stories.
Then you could only see me on trouser, 3/4, 1/4, 4/4, all kinds of trousers.
Niliingia kwa jeneza haraka, nikaingia ndani na nikakufa nikakauka.
Kama kuna kitu kizuri nilipata kwa high school, nilimpata Yesu.
Every Sunday at 9 a.m. on Tukuza. It's a fresh start indeed. It's all about big laughter.
They say the road to heaven is short and narrow. Now, if you are tall and fat, where will you pass?
It's all about the best comedians.
I was looking at you because you are looking at me.
It's all about the best joke.
Kuna reason why Olympics haitai happen Kenya. Mtu anakimbia huku kando mahoka. Brother, hakuna haja ukimbia na una sufuria kwa nyumba.
It's the biggest, craziest comedy show on TV, and it's coming to KTN.
Swag nayo.
Welcome to the second part of the Diaspora Show. Last weekend, the Kenyan embassy in Washington, D.C. held a diaspora conference that has been hailed by many as very successful. One of the key speakers during that occasion was Mr. James Oswago, the CEO of the IEBC. Due to overwhelming demand and request, we bring to you his status reports on where the diaspora stand when it comes to their voting rights, especially on issues around voter registration and where the polling stations are going to be. The second part will be a response to Mr. Oswago's presentation, and this is going to be given by Professor Kefa Otiso, a key leading Kenyan scholar based here in the US. Welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm Jambo. When you come from the Independent Electoral Boundaries Commission and you're addressing an audience in Washington of the diaspora, you are in danger. Both physically and otherwise. And I don't see the presence of security here, so I may not venture too much. But thank you very much. First, I had hoped to give a much more structured presentation, but the courtesy of Dr. Makori, this has to be limited. So if you find my presentation a little bit incoherent or ill-structured, that is because I want to pick those things that I think I should say now. Number one, I want to thank Mudhoni, who had spoken earlier, because he said two things. Mudhoni said that both the content and the process of policy formulation regarding the voting by the diaspora has been characterized by two things. One, she said ill communication, and the other one she said was discordance. Those were her words. Now, it is true that to a large extent there has been discordance, to a large extent there has been ill communication as regards what the diaspora should and should not vote on. But that has been because of many other factors. First, let us recall that the legal validity for the diaspora to vote came into being on the 27th of August 2010, meaning 2 years ago. Within that 2 years, we have had the space and the context to develop regulations and the infrastructure that would enable you to vote. The Commission immediately had run into two problems. Number one, the absence of coherent and credible data. You asked, where are these diaspora to be found? You were told there are between 1 and 3 million Kenyans living outside the country, and you asked, where are they to be found? You were told the majority are in the USA. So we sent a delegation to Washington, led by the chairman and myself as his handsman, and we also carried other people, and we wanted to ask, where are they? First, the embassy itself has got a dearth of records. They don't know for sure where are they. Now, if you want to register voters, whether these voters are in Karungu Bay, or these voters are in Murang'a, or these voters are in Madhioya, or in where, the first thing you need to know is a statistical certainty. Where are these people within a defined geographical setting? If you don't have that, as an election manager, you are hampered from beginning. So that was number one. Number two issue that contributed to this discordance and perhaps incoherence was, what does the Constitution say? And I'm glad in this audience we have, to my immediate right, Otiende Amolo, and in front there, Dr. I used to call him Akuro Akoth, but I've been told the name is Akuru Akoth. Now, you have two distinguished Kenyans. So the first question that we asked, on what area should the diaspora vote if you read the Constitution? You blame the two for any confusion or for any lack of coherence in that Constitution. And if any lynching must be done, do it now because they're here. So we proposed as a commission, and we sent delegations all over the whole place. And we proposed that this is the way diaspora should vote. We found resistance all over, but most vociferously where we are now, to a number of things. Number one, we suggested the diaspora should only vote in one election, the presidential election. And they read the Constitution back to us. Said, show us in the Constitution. Where does it say? Why are you disenfranchising us by not reading this Constitution properly? In fact, in one place you asked, have you read the Constitution? Then we said, very well, if that is a very difficult issue, one way of solving a problem is to move to the one where it is easier to seek agreement. And we felt the next issue would be easier to agree on, and that was, where do we register? We thought, and we suggested, let's do it at the embassies. From London to here to everywhere, we were told, not on our lives. embassies are places where you find the incumbent political establishment overrepresented, and we don't want to vote there, neither do we want to register there. Now we hit a rock. So when Muthoni says and cites the example of Rwanda, the example of Namibia, and the example of Senegal, I agree with her. In fact, she is stopping short. She should have included Cape Verde, where there is seats reserved aside for the diaspora, Mozambique, where there are seats reserved aside for the diaspora. So even you yourself, you deserve seats reserved aside for you in the Kenyan Senate and in the Kenyan National Assembly. But we never encountered that kind of conversation. So that was one problem that contributed to that discordance. The other one was the lack of what I would call commonality of ideas between various segments of the diaspora population. You come here, the diaspora will tell you, these are our priorities, these are our needs. You go to Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, you hear a different issue. You go to Southern Sudan, where there is a huge concentration of Kenyan populations who also want to vote, you hear a different thing. The Commission is charged with the responsibility of developing the diaspora voter regulations. And we have recently completed that exercise, and that regulation is in Parliament. But why did it take so long? It took so long because we couldn't agree. But when you develop regulation, they have to be universal regulations that apply all over the whole place. So, cutting a long story short, will or shall the Kenyan diaspora vote in 2013? The answer is yes. Along the following lines. Number one, as Ambitho has suggested, you yourselves have consented and support the idea of voting for the presidency, so you'll vote for the president, number one. Number two, from where? From the embassies. Number three, who will conduct that? The Commission will nominate returning officers, but the ambassador and the deputy ambassador will not be nominated as either returning officer or a deputy returning officer. The Commission will designate officials either from Kenya or from within the diaspora population itself to serve as the returning officers and also to serve as the deputy returning officers. Thirdly, if we choose an individual who is in the embassies and given some task, say a clerk or some other function, we have agreed with the Permanent Secretary of Foreign Affairs, those individuals that have been designated or will be designated as election officers would not be transferred for 6 months from the first date of that designation. When will the voter registration start in the diaspora? 1st of November. Will there be a BVR? BVR is the Kiswahili equivalent of voter, what does it mean? Geometric. Somebody has said geometric. So biometric voter registration. We will have the biometric voter registration, and we will send kits here depending on the population distribution. We've not done so because, number one, the diaspora regulation have not passed through Parliament. They will because they've agreed. Number two, we've not allocated the number of kits because we didn't know the population, but the Ministry of Foreign Affairs has promised to provide us with the actual numbers. So we'll do that. Thirdly, will elections be done? And how? Well, election will be done in the embassies. How do you transmit the results? First, in Kenya by law, that's for me?
Yeah.
Fine.
Finish your point. Finish your point. It's very important. Information is very important. So just finish that.
But Makori, they have said I can continue it for another 20 minutes. Very well. All right.
A few more.
Now, will there be? How will the election be conducted? They will bring the voter registration machines. The voter transmission will be done as in the country. But, number one, in Kenya, once you vote, the votes are counted in where you have voted. So we'll count those votes there. And we'll allow the parties to bring their agents there. So it's not really a question of these votes being stolen. Because number one, they'll be counted there and then when the excess closes. The problem should be two. One, how do you transmit those results? That's one problem. Secondly, how do you add those results to the national pool of results that are already in the country? But because everybody will have known where the election is done, the number of votes counted, when the commission announces that we have factored in so many of diasporas, it do not be a great mathematical problem, arithmetical problem, knowing how many. We will do that. Thirdly, we want to do this as transparently as possible by involving you to witness first how the technology itself works, secondly, how the voter transmission will be done. Will there be voter education? Yes. We launched a voter education curriculum on the 1st of October, and I think within next weeks or so, we will be rolling out that voter education in those locations where they'll be voting for the diaspora. Why do I say those locations? Because there are 47 locations in the world. And we have asked the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, tell us, out of these 47, we can't go all over the whole place. Tell us, based on some agreeable formula, where do you want us to do this? And we've agreed with the permanent secretary, and they're working on that particular one. I will have another chance, I believe, to speak about whether we are going to have credible, peaceful, and free elections next year. I saw in the program that my name had been slotted somewhere, so I'm reserving what I would have said then. But just in case I'm denied that right from mine to speak, I want to say this. When my chairman and the commission announced some time back that the elections will be held on 4th of March 2013, on almost 20 occasions, the chairman had been asked, when are the elections being held? And he kept on repeating until one day he said, very well, you will only know that the election will be held, you will only know that the election will be held in December when December comes and passes. So we want to assure you that the elections will be held in March next year. You will vote as we have stated, I've summarized for you. But if you have any idea that you want to share with us, please, we will be more than grateful. Look for the diaspora voter regulations, read them, and understand them, and help us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
When Bwana Oswago said earlier on that actually Foreign Affairs has not given him numbers to work with, and I've actually been doing quite a bit of the diaspora studies for a while, and we really should not be in that position. And the other thing, as a previous to my remarks, from about 2000 I've been calling for our own study of the diaspora. The data I'm using here is from the US Census. There's no reason why any serious country that is interested in engaging its diaspora should not fund its own study of the diaspora. Data that actually we can use for our own economic planning purposes rather than relying on basically what the US Census is going to give us today. And I know that there are a number of limitations budget-wise and things of that nature, but our diaspora now is big enough and substantial enough that actually we need to do a better job of knowing a little bit more about the diaspora and using those numbers to actually not just plan for elections alone, but actually even in the larger picture in terms of economic development. So I'm not going to go through the basis for the vote that has actually been covered, the very relevant articles. What I want to mention here in red is obviously that we have this clause about the continuous registration of citizens and voters for the progressive registration of citizens residing outside of Kenya and progressive realization of the vote. But there are many, many other clauses, and in the interest of time, I want to skip these things because people already know them fairly well. Then, of course, there is the notion of designating and facilitating rather than denying eligible citizens to vote and basically to stand for elections, and a number of other clauses that are here. And so in my case, then the point of contention between the IEBC and the diaspora comes down to a number of issues. And I'm actually adding to what Oswago said earlier, and this is really a conversation. When we're not quarreling, it's a conversation, and we need to add to the conversation. So my first contention is that this progressive vote can be satisfied, quite frankly, by the IEBC going for the minimalist interpretation of that, which basically can be very few people basically voting, and there's really nothing you can do under the current existing legal basis. But the diaspora's viewers have come to understand it is that actually we should have a progressive view of the progressive clause. There are ways you can interpret it, they're so minimal, but what I'm actually arguing for is a generous interpretation of that clause. Just because the law says progressive does not mean you do 10%. We can actually have something more representative that actually contributes to the larger national dialogue. So in my case, therefore, minimal satisfaction is not progressive. The other issue, obviously, is that, as we even had in the morning, the IEBC currently favors voting for the president and the embassies for logistical reasons. But obviously, the question of disenfranchisement and unequal treatment under the law and unequal exercise of the voting right become significant issues that we need to address. And by the way, I'll try to address some of this in terms of solutions. What I'm presenting now is what the problem is, but we'll end with a few solutions, which I think is what we all want to do, is basically a dialogue and move the whole thing forward. So some of the challenges, you had them in the morning from the IEBC presentation: registering a global Kenyan diaspora, establishing polling stations in foreign territories. I'm made to understand that we need a memorandum of understanding with foreign governments. There's the time difference between Kenya and places where the diaspora lives. We're trying to avoid cross-influence among voters. We don't want to see people in Kenya knowing so and so has won. Then what is the point of the diaspora voting if already people kind of already know what is happening? And of course, the limitations that are within the electoral law, which actually people in the IEBC are more familiar with than perhaps myself. Now, obviously, therefore, then the question of providing a proper ballot for the diaspora from all over Kenya, which makes the ballot actually quite challenging. Are you going to print 21 pages? For example, if you're trying to have a situation where everybody gets to vote for more than just the president. So those are practical issues, and we recognize those, and therefore we want to move a little bit forward with some of these things. And obviously, no matter how challenging an issue is, it still remains that the responsibility of the IEBC is to facilitate the vote. The Constitution does not say anything about how complicated the ballot is going to be. That is actually part of the responsibility of that office, that it's there to figure out how this thing is supposed to be implemented, no matter how complex it is, So yet we do recognize the practical challenges. That one we do understand for sure. So then the diaspora, in terms of logistical issues and the issues of voting at the consulates, would argue, as has been said already, that most of these three offices are too far from where most members of the diaspora live, and obviously therefore it makes it challenging for most Kenyans in the diaspora to vote. The second issue of vote tampering, that has already been addressed, and in fact even the Oswago mentioned something about it early on. The ambassadors are not going to do anything in that regard, nor their deputies. And of course, the other thing that is different now than in 2007 is that now the Constitution has very specific penalties for any individual that, of course, would want to mess with the vote, which is a big difference from what we had before. So in a way, we're actually in a much better position right now than we were in 2007. So here's where the numbers begin. This is US Census data that has been here for the last 10 years. I've made this map available to Foreign Affairs many, many times. And so the question becomes then, why are we struggling to know where we actually need to go and have the vote? So my presentation, Oswago, is that wherever you see the big circles is basically where we need to register the diaspora, all these cities. Chicago, Atlanta, Houston, Los Angeles, Dallas, and Fort Worth. The only thing that has changed, even though the numbers are based on 2000 data, is that Minneapolis and Boston have grown substantially, and because the data is based on a 1 to 6 sample, whatever number you see here can basically be multiplied by 6 to give you a pretty good estimate of the number of Kenyans we have in the various cities across the country. So my key point is, if you're going for a minimal approach or a progressive approach, let's go for these big cities that you see here. That will give you a good sense of where the diaspora is, and at least people will sense that you have tried to accommodate as many as possible. I know what the Constitution says, but I'm saying let's go for the vote in some of these places. Moving on very quickly here, let's do, in the short time, I'm asking for mobile voter registration when the kits become available. Let's have them move across the country significantly and basically register people in the various cities that are listed here. In addition to the consulates, obviously I'm asking for Atlanta, Chicago, Houston, Dallas, Fort Worth, Boston, and Minneapolis. And my point is, if you register people in all these places, let's also vote in all these places. That is a key point. There's no point in registering people across the country and then you end up limiting them to vote in the embassy. So that needs to happen. And I mean, I don't have the power to make it happen, but I'm requesting, and in the interest of a good national spirit, that actually that needs to happen. The second option, obviously, is electronic internet voting, which can be done. And obviously, the IEBC has not been open to this particular option, but actually in many other countries, this is actually a very good option because it does a number of things. One is the fact that it's very good for remote internet voting is good for countries with large numbers of expatriate voters, which is true of Kenya, and it can actually handle a complex ballot. Remember that question I had earlier on of how do you make the choice possible for everybody in the diaspora when you're talking of offices across the country. You see, the good thing with an electronic thing, if you click once, I'm from, let's say, Rachuonyo, or I'm from Kiambu County, it then takes you to the offices in Kiambu, which you cannot do with a manual piece of paper, you know. But if you say I'm from Kiambu, it takes you specifically to offices in Kiambu. If I say I'm from Nyamira, it takes me specifically to offices within Nyamira, which therefore makes it possible for me to vote for all the offices I want very easily, which in fact is what other countries have done. That said, the reality is that there's internet trust in internet voting issues, but if people can trust their money to internet, they should be able to trust the vote to the internet. I could have gone into the details of these issues, but we don't have time. There's a question of secrecy and freedom of the vote, accessibility and the usability, which, by the way, is the reason why we need it in the first place. It's a remote and widely scattered population. And finally, the fact that when you introduce internet voting, by the way, it affects the power of the IEBC, because now you have to have a third player who is the person who is introducing the software. But that can easily be regulated, quite frankly, even though we recognize some of these difficulties. So how to achieve them? This is a political process. The IEBC is right to stick to the law. There's nothing wrong with it. But as citizens, it's our responsibility in the diaspora to continue putting pressure on IEBC and the government. Judicial pressure, which has the effect basically of judicial review of the existing law. Because if it's a judicial review, it will actually force the IEBC to interpret the law differently, because it will have changed the constitution effectively. Number three, and more importantly, and adding value to the other two, the diaspora needs to be organized. I've always argued the government is an elephant, and whenever it sees other elephants, it pays attention. The way we are scattered, and actually when Oswago mentioned this before, if he goes to other places and he's told 10 different things, then obviously it actually doesn't make his work any easier. But the more we become organized, I think it will actually help us to have a coherent conversation between us and the IEBC.
Watch the Diaspora Voice every Friday from 7:30 p.m. on www.ktnkenya.tv.